1692.
The property owner.
In the summer of 1692, on 4 different occasions, June, July, August, and September,
we know 19 people were executed by hanging.
Found guilty by a jury of their peers of witchcraft.
Welcome to Witch Hunt, where we uncover the truth behind some of history's most compelling events. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
And I'm Sarah Jack. Today, we have a special episode that takes us back to one of the darkest chapters in American history, the Salem witch trials. But this time, we're exploring what happened after the trials ended.
The opening clip in this episode is an example of the work done by today's guest, Tom Phillips, a renowned TV producer with a deep passion for historical storytelling. Tom has been working on an exciting new project called Salem Aftermath for his production company, G Street Productions. Salem Aftermath looks into the strained relationships after the Salem witch hunt and the psychological impacts on those who lived through it.
Tom's extensive research and collaboration with leading scholars brings a unique perspective to this often overlooked period. The screenplay has won numerous awards and generated buzz.
We also touch on the ongoing efforts to exonerate the remaining accused witches and the importance of historical justice in today's world. This is an episode you won't want to miss.
So let's dive into our conversation with Tom Phillips. It is such a great pleasure to have you here today. Tell us a bit about your background and previous film projects.
Well, thanks for having me. It's interesting to be talking to a relative, a Rebecca nurse. That's pretty cool. I've been doing witch stuff since 2007. So I started with the History Channel, first series back in 2005, I think, for almost 4 years. Monster Quest. Fun series. You can see by my room, a 12-year-old does the decorating. I then Nat Geo, got Discovery Channel. Just about everybody but Disney. So it's been about 26 years.
I am a descendant of Rebecca Nurse. She's my 9th great-grandmother, and her sister, Mary Esty, is my 9th great-grandmother also. They both hanged during the Salem witch trials.
It's interesting because I'm writing about history and you are like living history. To have that connection, it's very cool.
Yeah, I've been really compelled by some of her recorded statements from her trial when she was, pleading for her life, trying to find the thing that was going to get the magistrate's attention that I'm not a witch. There's no witches here. And especially when she said the world will know of my innocence, that's really driven me with my podcasting work.
Yeah, that comment plays a big role in what I wrote too, by the way. Yeah.
That is
She's
awesome.
not been forgotten.
Yeah, Rebecca Nurse is also my aunt. I'm descended from Mary Esty, like Sarah is, so we're cousins. And I also have some other interesting ancestors on the other side of the witch trials making the accusations, and jurors, judges, basically anybody involved in the witch trial. I've got a few ancestors who did that. And my paternal grandfather, Joseph Hutchinson, he was actually one of the people who accused Tituba and Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne initially, but then he came to the defense of Rebecca Nurse later on.
Wow.
That's our tie.
Yeah, we this past summer, I got to visit her homestead where there's a beautiful monument that's been there for decades and decades. And Josh, do you have a relative on one of the monuments there?
There's a marker there to all the people who defended Rebecca Nurse in court, the people who signed the petitions and gave testimony in her favor. And Joseph Hutchinson is listed on there. But the way that they wrote it, it says JOS' Hutchinson. So the first time I saw it, I saw my name, Josh Hutchinson, on the stone at Rebecca Nurse's memorial. And that's how I found out that I had connections to the witch trials.
Well, we're so excited to get to talk about this important project that you're making around the history.
Yeah, it's funny. The way it sorted out is equally bizarre. I did a show for Nat Geo with the scholars I'm working with now and Smithsonian Channel, but we did a film for Annie Harris, with Essex Heritage Foundation in Salem. And she's been showing that, I think, for 12 years. So she actually started this. She called us up and said, we want to do something new. And I'm like, okay. So we were on a Zoom call. And it turns out she's been taking a survey, a poll from her viewers. So all the people would go in and watch our movie. He'd be asking, what do you want to see next? Now, what makes that interesting is Salem, I think, has 1 million viewers in October alone, right? And I think you had 1,200,000 record attendance this year from all over the world, all walks of life. So she went and she asked these people, what do you want to see? Well, if you're a Hollywood or you're a network and you're going to make an investment in a project, it's nice to know there's a market. Now, everyone knows Salem is a hot topic, especially around Halloween. But now we know, and I never would have suspected they want to see what happened after it, hence Aftermath.
The descendants, tourists, they are so concerned with what came after. We see it all the time in social media interactions. There's so many great pages on Facebook and other platforms where descendants are talking about their research or asking questions about the history if they're new to it. And there's so much that people want to know about what happened after.
Well, it's funny because when I first thought about that, I'm thinking, being a director and writer, I'm thinking, okay, there's no courtroom case, that's over. There's no executions, because I know how people are. They want to have something dramatic. And I thought this isn't going to be effective, but I was so wrong.
Your new screenplay is called Salem Aftermath. Can you
Right.
tell us just a little synopsis of what it is?
Basically, again, when Annie came forward with this information, the scholars and I had a Zoom call, and they presented me with all the known information about these characters. Now, we're talking about Professor Ted Baker, Salem University, Professor Benjamin Ray, and historian Marilyn Roach. Now, they're all published. They've all been studying this for decades. So you bring the three of them together, they're experts on different characters. Like Ben would be Samuel Paris. Marilyn would be all the women, Elizabeth Proctor and Putnam, and Tad, everyone else. I mean, so when you bring them all, you have pretty much everything you need. But I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm thinking, can we really bring them back to life? So I met a doctor through the History Channel back in 2008, Dr. Hogan Shiro. He's basically an expert on human behavior. And I said, Hogan, here's the challenge. I have all this information. Is there really a way to rebuild historical characters? And I can read you what he wrote, actually. Quote Hogan, while there is variation in individual behavior, human actions often follow predictable patterns based on their age, sex, marriage status, parental status, standing in the community, and other factors. So basically, he goes on to describe this, and what he's telling us is human behavior is very predictable. If somebody slaps you in the face, there's two ways you're going to respond. If somebody kills your mother, your father, or your children, it's basically one way you respond. So it almost comes down to common sense. So when I looked at it, all of a sudden it made sense. And I started writing it. And the first scene I wrote, it was terrible. 3 weeks, didn't work, come back. And all of a sudden it fell into place. And, if you can start something off with a bang over the audience head and engage them right away, you have a place to go. And after that, I kept writing. I had 70 pages in 12 days. And then I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, should I send it to the scholars? Because, Hollywood and scholars don't get along, and my job is to entertain as well. And it was very entertaining. So I thought it was very good. So I'm thinking they won't like it. So I sent it to Marilyn first, and I'm waiting to get beat up, The email was 5 pages long, changed that. She likes it. Minor changes. One they made right away. So I'm like, okay, Tad Baker's going to beat me up. So I sent to Tad, and I know Tad a long time too. He liked it. So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be Ben. Ben's going to bash me over the head. But no, Benjamin Ray also approved of it. And I'm thinking, this is really strange because it's not boring. You would think, okay, no offense to scholars, but their job is to educate. But this story is so bizarre, so compelling, with so many surprising plot twists, leading to an ending that nobody will foresee.
It's so exciting. There's so much power in how this came together. It really does go back to those voices of those women, you know, calling out hundreds of years ago, we're innocent, we're innocent. And combine that with your creativity and this incredible team of researchers. I really am so excited to see the story. What characters are we going to get to learn from in this story?
Oh, characters. I almost think of the classic film 12 Angry Men. He has such strong characters. This story, and I mean, kind of keep in mind, the story has never been told. These people have never been addressed. So we've taken the latest science methods, almost like a police forensic profiling, to build, a suspect. But in our case, unlike detectives, we had a lot of information pulled together. There were very little missing pieces. But the characters, I mean, Ann Putnam, she's always been portrayed wrong. I mean, they all have. But she is an interesting character, a very strong female lead. I mean, look at what happened to her. She's 12 years old. She points a finger and people die. And what really shocked me, and I asked Tad again last night, parents took their children to the executions. So you could be 5 years old, 10 years old. And actually this is a gift from Tad and Ben. They gave me the news. Now, what's interesting about this news, I didn't know this. So back then, they didn't snap your neck. You would hang and strangle in this thing for, I think, as much as 7 minutes before you died. So I can imagine a child watching that and not being traumatized by it.
It was a gruesome experience.
The people would be there kicking and gasping for air.
So, and the other thing, we applied a couple of things to make it different. I did a lot of work with Vietnam veterans, and I learned about PTSD. And I immediately said on our Zoom call to Scott, I said, wait a minute, Dan's definitely got PTSD. Would anyone argue that? And Hogan agreed. I don't think any psychologist would argue it. And most of the characters are suffering from some kind of trauma. I mean, how could they not be? So, Anne, her father, Thomas Putnam. I mean, he's always been portrayed as a character. I mean, we do know he altered handwriting documents in court. We know he did that. But did he do it to intentional kill people? Was that his intention? It's such a bizarre story, and these people are not black and white. They contain elements of both good and bad. And Elizabeth Proctor, she's declared a witch, and she's no longer considered a citizen. She's not even alive to the court system, loses her home, her money, not allowed to own anything. And she is in a world ruled by men where there's no equality. And she decides she's going to fight. What she pulls off and what she does, talking about a strong woman, she's going to be one of the first women to fight a male-dominated society with a positive outcome. I mean, Samuel Nurse, your relative, interesting character. He's never been portrayed correctly either. So, it's an interesting collection of people.
Sounds like it'll make a really great series or production. What format are you looking to take with this?
When I wrote the screenplay, and I wasn't trying to write a screenplay, I was just trying to see if it would work. And I'm thinking a screenplay for a feature. No, I think this would be better for a series because these characters need time to develop. And when I say time, it's not like you're sitting there and you have time to get popcorn. Every minute of this, because of the way they're intertwined, it's so dramatic, and they change. So you have characters that start being one way, but by the end of the series, they're not the same people they started out as. They actually grow into this, which is really cool. For example, Reverend Gray, he shows up in the same one when he comes into Salem, as you know, to save the day. Meets with John Hale. It reminds me almost of a Clint Eastwood movie, Spaghetti Western. Clint comes in with his gun, and we kind of know where it's going. But not with Grain. Grain comes in with his Bible, but that doesn't work here. It's made very clear to him that this town is torn. You better come up with something new, Bub. And he does. And with him, you see it early on. And then he grows. And by the end of the film, the series, he does something that you won't see coming. He just totally saves the day, but in a way that you just don't, it's not the normal reality. He just manipulates things so well.
And we get a look at what the accusers experienced. So, you mentioned her PTSD, but she goes through this saga. Her life has hardly begun. She's just growing right then. What happens with Anne?
Yeah, and she dies. I think life expectancy for Puritans is 70 years, and she doesn't even get half of that. So if you look at the facts, you can tell she's suffering from trauma. It actually did her health in as well. And her father as well dies young. And I think the mom dies 2 weeks later, if I remember correctly. So yeah, she's interesting. And the thing that makes this, is it a horror series? Is it a drama? I was talking to my agent about this last night, and it has elements of both. I mean, if you're looking for graphic, disturbing scenes, oh yeah, there's quite a few. One in particular, and it's not so much what you see; it's something turning up where it shouldn't be. Things that just throw you off. And these people are suffering, especially in daymares. So you're awake, but you're still seeing things that aren't there. Night paralysis, sleep paralysis. And imagine waking up to a screaming child, and everyone has nightmares. But in Anne's case, screaming goes on for a long time. I mean, this woman's suffering. She never marries. She never has her own kids. Yeah, she's a tragic character. But then again, you can't help but admire her and feel sympathy for her. As with most of the characters. There's no black and white.
Yeah, and then you have the other side. You have people like Samuel Nurse, who lost his mother, and you have Elizabeth Proctor, who was almost executed herself.
Right. And she was saved because she was pregnant. Right.
Mhm.
But Samuel Nurse, I mean, again, and I went to Dr. Hogan's Road with some of these questions. So, yeah, someone killed my mom, my family. I'm left. I'm the head of the family. We all hate her. And every day we hate her, but to live in hate 24/7, that also takes a toll on the family. So he has to make a choice, because going on hating people is not going to solve anything either. So he does something that no one will suspect. He's a interesting character.
And there's a character we haven't really discussed, and I don't know if we called a character, but the fear of the devil was a real thing that was driving the story.
Yeah. They actually believe the devil walks among them physically. Oh, yeah. I mean, taking your kids to execution, I guess they were doing it because they thought it was the right thing. He was possessed, he's evil, so now he's going to pay the price. We would never think that today, but you have to step into their shoes.
Yeah. This is going to be such an opportunity to step into their shoes, and people want it. I'm thinking of all the reasons people are going to be drawn to this. How's it going to be like the Crucible? Well, it's not going to be. What are they going to learn about the people? What are they going to learn about themselves, about us as humans from the story? It's all packed in there.
I think the term human is very important because they are human. And with the scholars, we don't put words in anyone's mouth. There's nothing in this series that would misrepresent any of the characters. They're all treated respectfully. And when we don't know something, we leave it open. We don't address it. It wouldn't be fair to do that.
We love that respectful memory and the humanization, because these were real people, real human beings who went through these things. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you made them human again?
It's almost common sense. For example, let's take Anne. and suffers, obviously, PTSD. Her father and her mom are responsible. They motivated her and encouraged her to do this. So you're a father, it's over, and you see the declining health of your own daughter. I mean, what father doesn't love his daughter? Again, human predictability. Most fathers love their kids, and we feel that they had a tight bond, father and daughter. And the other reason why, and Hogan also brought up, when you have trauma like that and you're an outcast in your own town, the family unit becomes your support group. So they had each other. Everyone outside didn't really know what they were going through. So they probably were very tight. So it's kind of common sense. With Green, going in, and he's a religious man, but if you think of it, religion's also the cause of this in some ways. So it's not going to help. But when he starts to use psychology, he learns how to, when someone confronts him and says, she killed my mom. He's like, yeah, she did. And then you're like, now what do I say to that? He's able to manipulate people, and he grows throughout the plot until he does an amazing thing. But all of them kind of grow. And there's really no evil character except maybe Stolten. He's probably the most questionable, darkest person in there, But yeah, and I think what I really need here is, so we have a popular subject. We had a poll taken. We know people interested. In fact, you just proved that to me as well. And what Sarah just said, we have some of the leading scholars in the world to back it up. We have a psychologist to back it up. But so what do we need? And actors to come forward. I mean, everything in Hollywood, TV, who's in it? So the way to speed this up, we can get someone to come forward. And I'm an artist. Actors are obviously artists. I think you don't usually get a chance to do something for the first time. There's remakes, there's sequels. This is the first time these people will be presented in a realistic way. And if I'm an actor, I would be compelled to come forward and at least look at that role. Anne Putnam, she's seen at 12, she's seen at 32. So a lot of actresses could play that part. But I think for the actors, it's a chance to give a voice to the dead, to bring historical figures back to life based on real science and real research. So they're going to have a shot at it. So we need them to come forward.
That's such a good point. And just like you are bringing a voice to them, our podcast work brings a voice to them. These scholars and authors who write about it, their voices. There's other people out there, actors, people with social power that can add to the amplification of that voice. And I mean, it's art, it's creative, but it's also advocacy. So it will be very powerful when you get the characters filled out by particular actors who ever seizes this really special historic opportunity. As remarkable as Salem Witch Trial history is, this story is going to be embraced by so many and give such a message. And those that get to participate in it and bring it to life are going to have a remarkable experience.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Well, I have a couple of people that I would love to participate in my ninth great grandmother's story here. And so I'm going to say a couple names out there, but I'm going to start with a male character. There's an actor who spent seasons representing a marginalized person in the Walking Dead TV series. His name is Ross Marquand. And I know as an actor, he's also known for his impersonations of other actors and characters. So he's got great talent in imagining and presenting the way somebody is. And I think he would be really powerful. Maybe Samuel Nurse. That would be one that I'd really love. But of course, I can't help but think of, Rebecca Nurse. What a significant, powerful role. She's the name that most people recognize first as a witch trial victim, who from history was hanged as a witch, Rebecca Nurse. People just know that name. And so I'm going to say a couple names here. But I think it would be amazing to see Jane Seymour or Susan Sarandon or Helen Mirren portray her. They all have so much experience. They're beautiful women. I believe my grandmother was a beautiful woman. And we know how determined she was to make it through the story or to make it through these trials. One of the things that's really wild about the Salem witch trials is so many accused witches in other trials survived. Salem was unique because it got rolling and the convictions just kept hitting. So, but Josh, what about you? Is there anybody you'd like to see?
Well, I want to point out that there are a lot of you actors out there who are descendants of Salem witch trial victims and have a personal connection. And this might be a great way for you to get into your ancestors' mind and, understand what happened and what they went through. So we've seen a lot of people on Who Do You Think You Are and other family tree type
Right.
series of shows like Claire Danes, Sarah Jessica Parker, Jean Smart, Jeff Daniels. I know Tom Felton from Harry Potter movies is a descendant. So there's just so many out there, descendants who had some ancestor that was involved in some way in the witch trials. And I'd just recommend this project highly to those people.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be disappointed. I think because I'm an artist, and with all the sequels and remakes going on, I mean, I think the world is ready for this now. It's never been done. It's going to be done right. And I'm sure people will copy it after the fact. But I mean, we know we have a popular subject. If this airs on, say, fall around Halloween, people are going to watch it. And we haven't had any serious approaches on Salem, mostly comedies recently. I mean, The Crucible is my favorite, but that was totally inaccurate, although extremely entertaining and well acted. But this is a first. And the fact that it is entertaining, it's won 11 screenplay competitions in a row, 2 big ones. That's how I got my agent, Eliza, with Rising Suns Agency. So it's got appeal. They're saying, it's not just me. Yeah, this is good. And the scholars are saying this is good. So an actor coming forward to do this, they're not going to be disappointed. It's going to be an experience. And again, giving a voice to people who cannot speak for themselves.
It's a top quality screenplay that's been proven by the awards it's winning, and a top quality crew and helmed by a top quality person. So you wouldn't be disappointed joining this project.
Well, I think too, in my case, I don't expect to direct them all. It doesn't work that way, but I would welcome other directors with names to come forward because it's a team effort. I've been on TV for a long time, and no one person really does it. You have to have a team. And so I welcome other people to come on board. So that's not an issue.
You said the world is ready for this, and I want to point out how ready it is. Just recently, a team that we work on was able to pass legislation with the support of important legislators who worked hard for us to get an apology to the descendants of the Connecticut witch trials. It also absolved those victims. And for that to come together like it did, it was almost unbelievable how things fell into place. But I believe that when people respond to these voices of history, the innocence that's still crying out, there's something that pushes it forward, and there's so much success found. So I know that you are going to have continued success with this project, and those who participated are going to have the experience of a lifetime.
Now, what you're doing is important because you're actually changing history. So we're merely talking and telling about it. But timing of when this comes up for legislation, like is next fall? I mean, what time frame are we looking at there?
Right now, we're looking at this fall to get the legislation written, and then it would come up in the session that begins in January. So it would be proposed in January and uh, potentially could be passed in the spring, but most likely will carry on to the fall or even 2026.
See,
And
that's actually good for a network because they can tie into that, cross market that, because that gives us something that's actually happening that should have been what 2024 hasn't been done yet. So I think that's good for a network because that's really you'd be in the news, obviously. It'd be covered by the media. So that's really good publicity for not only the series, but it works both ways.
yes, and I mentioned the Connecticut legislation, but what we're talking about now is the Massachusetts legislation. And this fall, when we first kicked it off, we were in the media immediately around the Halloween time. That's when people are, wanting to learn. The interest is sparked because it's Halloween, and Halloween is such a great, fun, creative, exciting time.
Salem here every day.
Yeah, Josh, do you want to tell them about what this legislation over Massachusetts, what it's about?
Yeah, this legislation looks to exonerate people who have not been exonerated by previous legislation. So in the past, 31 individuals who were either convicted during the Salem witch trials or the one man who was pressed with stones,
Right.
Giles Corey, they were all exonerated beginning in 1703 and carrying up to Elizabeth Johnson Jr. just was exonerated in 2022. And so anyone who's been convicted in the Salem witch trials has been cleared. But those who were convicted in Boston in trials before Salem happened, starting back in 1648 and going through 1688, there were 8 convictions resulting in 5 executions. And none of those individuals has had their name cleared yet. And there are also so many people who were indicted or arrested who suffered in various ways. Their reputations were ruined. They languished in jails for long periods of time, and they've never been acknowledged or received an apology. Nobody in Massachusetts, the victims have not received any apology officially from either the colony or the Commonwealth.
And you're talking about people jailed during the Salem witch trials.
Yes, that includes people jailed during the Salem witch trials, as well as those who were jailed in previous years before that. So,
Yeah, and one of the characters that's going to be really important to Salem Aftermath, Tituba, she has never received an acknowledgement of her suffering officially. She doesn't have a monument, and she was in prison for months and months. There's also a little girl who was around 4 years old. Her mother was one of the hanging victims of the Salem witch trials. But Dorothy Good, she herself was examined and questioned and tried and in prison. So we would really like to see the book shut on this. The efforts of family members after the Salem witch trials got the ball rolling. But there are so many people whose lives were torn apart from this that didn't have anybody to advocate for them, who've sat there in silence, not being recognized as innocent, not getting, that respectful memory attached to their name, including Tituba and hundreds. So if the Massachusetts General Court will take this bill that we're going to propose, it can complete that chapter. And then both of the colonies that had the greatest number of witch trials will have then apologized for the 17th century witch trials in this country. And that's really significant. There are still women and children who suffer because neighbors or family have similar fears as the Salem witch trials, and people will be attacked, killed. And any time that the history is addressed and historical justice is applied, it's a message to people that, this wasn't okay back here and it's not going to be okay now.
Tituba was actually the most difficult person to rebuild because we lost all track of her after the trial. So I can mention one scene 'cause I told you about it. So, being human, history is important, but you always wonder what would happen if Alexander the Great sat down with Napoleon. This is just where I think anyway. A lot of people ask questions. So she disappears, but I wanted to bring her back. And the only way to bring her back is through a dream. Now, we know Anne had nightmares and dreams. And as Hogan said, you can't control your dreams. So she probably got nightly visits from all these people. And my question was to Hogan and the three scholars, if you were Tituba, we were Anne, and you did meet in a dream, not knowing you're dreaming, what would Anne say to her? What would Tituba say to her? What would that be like? It would be pretty intense because Anne is now 32 years old. And how long has Tituba been gone? For maybe, 20 some years, correct?
Mhm.
And I think she might have married, but I guess might have had a kid, but it seems like that's not been confirmed by old scholars. But yeah, so seems like that people want to see. The scholars may not agree with some of these, but it's funny. You can't say it didn't happen.
Yeah. Dreams are something that all humans can identify with. We're all, I don't want to use the word tortured by them, but at some point, most people have had a night terror or a terrible nightmare around something that they grieve about or that they're extremely fearful about. And we know from the historical record, this was happening to all ages of people in witch trial situations, including Salem. I think it's really powerful to continue that element of coping with life as Anne has grown. It sounds like that's part of her continued story. I'm really excited to get to see what she dreams and what they talk about. Those who lost mothers and sisters and grandfathers and fathers to the hangings had great loss. But we know Anne and Tituba also experienced terrible loss, things that never came to fruition for either of them. Losing, you talked about that very special bond that Anne Jr. must have had with her father. It comes out when you look at her apology, when she writes, she's expressing the sorrow that she has felt from loss and recognizing that her actions may have caused that for other people. Wow.
It's funny. I can mention one other scene that since you brought that up, and Reverend Green actually read the apology, we believe, in real life. Now you're a woman. Let me ask you this question. And Marilyn and Ted, they like it to be the way it should with Green. But I was thinking, after all she's been through in the story, I kind of want to give closure to the character and closure to the audience. You want to engage your audience and sympathize with the characters because we can see a bit of all of us in Anne. It's, and having her read it kind of gives her, I just feel like we owe her that. Let her actually read it in public, but most likely it was great. But there are sometimes I want to push it the entertainment way, and scholars are like, okay, that they might approve of that. But I think a network would, because I think they would understand that it's about storytelling and engaging the audience. And Anne, I couldn't stop writing. And every time she came up, I just got into the character and I really felt sorry for her. She's just been so tragically portrayed. And I think all we really have done is turn them into human beings. And we all know what human beings are capable of. You have the worst of human nature and the best of human nature in this story. But I try to give them all closure. Not everyone gets there, obviously, but there's enough there that, especially what's going on today, is very timely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would love to see her read it. Of course, this isn't my expertise, the creation of a scene, but with all this dreaming and imagining, even if Reverend Green begins to read it, but in Anne's mind, she's reading it, and that's what we hear. and then it fades back to him. That would give me chills. There's my little wild idea, but
I th-
no,
I think since we still have equality issues with men and women. Back then, women, she wasn't allowed to speak because she was a woman. So I have an issue with that, and I'm a guy. So I'm thinking the audience today wouldn't understand him reading it, and they might consider it insulting to the character. So do we have to be historically accurate with that, or be more
right.
respectful of women? So I would go with being more respectful and crossing that line.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such it's, what she had to say that day, um, through the Reverend, it really gives you a lot to chew on. You see some of the perceptions they had about the satanic influence on the community. But then again, she feels undeserving of forgiveness. It comes across in there, and she does deserve forgiveness. As a descendant, I don't even hesitate. I hope that she felt, I hope that that did bring her some closure. Um, in our work here with the podcast, when we were first starting out, I was looking for guests, and I really we wanted to have a variety of talks around Salem and witch trials. And doing a search online, I came across an author named Greg Hool, who is publishing this year a book about his ancestors, the Putnams. And we brought him on the podcast, and I could not wait to see him and be face to face with the descendant who comes from a family that was accusing. Now, Josh here has shared he has accusers in his family line as well. It definitely hasn't stopped us from working together.
That's why I think an investigative series behind how we did the science in this with you and him, families that were mortal enemies coming together to solve some of these questions would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, we're all working together today to amplify this message. And this is a message that I talked about the book closing, like a chapter closing on the guilt of the victims of Massachusetts, but it's a message that's never going to be over, because as you have pointed out, human nature is predictable. Our behaviors follow certain courses. Getting the message out that witch hunting is inappropriate. It was inappropriate then. And whatever the situation is now, it's always going to have to be spoken to. And the descendants on both sides are taking the time to do it in their own, opportunities and creative ways. And again, this project that has come together from your work with your colleagues over the years, coming to this, and here we are working on this project at the same time. It's also timely and powerful. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, especially what you're doing to get these people, cleared, because that's a great tie-in, and it shows that I didn't know that was still going on. In fact, I asked Ben. At first, Ben didn't know about it, but then he realized what you were talking about. And I'm thinking, but this is great for a network because they can capitalize on that. And also, if the network picks this up, it would help promote what you're doing because they'd all be connected. It's a no-brainer. It's a win-win.
It's
And the
a
bottom
win-win.
line is, and we're helping people who can't help themselves, the dead. I mean, it's a good thing to be part of.
It's an amazing thing to be part of.
And the story is pretty much a roller coaster from hell. I mean, I don't think people are prepared for what they're going to see. I think it's shocking, dramatic, bizarre. And it's just a story of human beings at each other's throats. But again, you have the worst and best of human nature. And in the end, how it leads to changing what happens in our court systems in America, affecting the Bill of Rights. A lot of good came out of it too, at the same time. And I think that it's important when you mentioned Rebecca Nurse. I don't think her cry innocent has been forgotten. And it definitely plays a major role in the screenplay or the series. Yes, we have to remember what happened so it doesn't happen again.
It has to stop. Can you tell us again how people can get in touch with your agency to get involved in this
Yes.
project?
Elijah, you put Rising Suns Agency. Maybe I think I sent you the email. Maybe you can post his contact info. He's fine with that. I talked to him last night. Yeah. He will be taking you to a network in June. I can't say who it is, but he's got a lot of connections, and it's timely because we wouldn't start production all the way to the spring of next year. I mean, it's possible they might want to start sooner the time of what you're doing to have it done for next Halloween. It's possible. I mean, I worked on shows with less time, so we could do it. And I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to pull together. I mean, I wrote a screenplay, a script and a screenplay. The screenplay has all the shots in it. So any competent director could pick up and work from this. And we have episode 1. I have to do bullets for the next 5 episodes. We're looking at a 6-part series, hour long, but we could rush it. I mean, I've been rushed before.
And earlier you mentioned in investigative series.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah. So, and again, I mentioned to my agent, there's 2 approaches here. We have a scripted series where you have actors, so they are doing their lines, which would be great. We need to do that to bring it to life. People find that more exciting. But the investigative series look at the science behind how we created and brought these people back to life. So it'd be Sarah and Putnam descendant working with the scholars and Dr. Hogan Giroux. It could be a one show, it could be a couple shows, but it would play in well with the scripted series because you could watch the scripted, and then after, let's show you how we did this. And the fact it's being led by 2 mortal enemy families, I think the audience will find that compelling.
Yes, and they really were, and it wasn't just, Ann Jr., her mother went, for whatever unknown reason, she was relentless to accuse Rebecca.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a really important piece. That you can never get enough of hearing from the scholars either. We just love having Emerson Baker on our episode, talking to him about his research, and the public's always ready for more from the team that you've mentioned. So that would be great.
Yeah. And we haven't passed judgment. I say it's funny. And even I work on it every day. I'm not passing judgment. I don't think anybody will, because if we judge them, we're judging ourselves.
Yes.
I mean, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. And I think the audience will sympathize with even the most evil type people, but they're not really evil because no one's intentionally trying to kill anyone. I don't think any scholar would say they were. It got out of control. I mean, when you let 12-year-olds run the courtroom, what they did, Rebecca was declared innocent, I believe, right? And then the kids threw a fit and did her show, and now she's guilty. When do you let a 12-year-old dictate what adults do? And I can imagine what Anne looked back on that. I mean, she had to know that her parents were influencing her when she got older. She had to think, why did you not stop me? Why did you listen to me? Why did this happen? That's why I wanted to bring Tituba back, because if I had my way, if I was Anne, I think I would be angry. I would be angry because no man wanted me. I never married. I was an outcast. As a woman, I'll never have my own children. My parents are dead. I have 8 siblings I'm taking care of. Very little money. People hate me. They won't let me in the church. I mean, I would lose it if I was her.
Yeah.
Not just angry, but I emotionally lose it. I would want an answer. And I actually came up with an answer. I had to get it approved, but Tituba does answer the question. I think I told you about it, but I was Googling how to deal with human drama, why do humans suffer. Of course, Buddha came up. I love Buddha, but it wasn't the way I wanted to go. But I finally found a way to give an analysis, and Marilyn loved it.
Awesome.
Again, Marilyn's key because I'm not going to say it's totally a woman's story, but it's Anne, Elizabeth and Anne are women, and Anne is the main thrust of the story. But all the other characters are intertwined. We can't just do her without all of them. They all are important where they mingle all the time.
I think it's so important the way you're getting into the characters' minds. We need to understand all
Yeah.
sides, what they were thinking. That explains why this happened, which then leads us to realize how we can prevent this from happening again. Once we know why the accusers made the accusations, then we really get a grasp of it.
From my point of view, when I first thought Aftermath, I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. I really didn't think it would work. And in my job, a lot of shows I've done, not that they never should have been done. I love the networks. I work with them. It's my peers, great people, no complaint. That's my job. But a lot of times you're sitting there and you're going, this isn't working. I got to push the bar. I got to make something up. It's slow in the middle. I mean, how many movies have we seen where it starts off with a bang and then you could cut an hour and not miss it? That doesn't happen here.
No.
But yeah, no.
Yeah, it can't happen. I'm so excited. It's, sometimes we get asked, do you have enough material to keep going with your podcast? And it's like, it will outlive us. There's
Yeah.
so much to look at. You can go back to the same information and glean, and you can look at it with a different lens, or, put your feet in the shoes of the other person. There's so many important things. And so you really have done something historical here. It's going to be powerful. It's special. And it's been such a privilege to get to talk to you about it on this side of things.
The characters, they grow with the story. You don't have something where you meet Reverend Grain or John Hale. What you see in the first episode, when you meet all these characters, they change through every episode. Some of them achieve their goals, some of them do not. But some of them actually have second thoughts, which they did, and Sewell, for example, and they kind of live it in front of you. You kind of watch them grow as human beings. They learn from what they did, but at the same time, you feel sorry for them because they're all in a living nightmare from hell. They're in the same location. They're seeing where the executions happen every day. They're on the same road where the cart drove the victims to the hill to hang them. They see where the meeting hall was, where all the accusations took place. I mean, if you have trauma, you're supposed to leave that location. You don't stay there. You want to heal. How can they heal? By staying there. And it's like the American Civil War. Even though the war is over, there's still a line drawn, even today to some degree. So even though it was over, the thing about me, which I sympathized for them, it was never over.
Never.
Never. It could never be over. And I think that the fact that that's the truth and that it's entertaining, and I don't mean that in in the wrong way, respectfully, that their story needs to be told because people are going to be blown away by this. It's going to make people today, I watch movies. We all watch movies for motivation. We all got issues. We all got problems. Our country's got problems. And to watch some people who've been through hell, and some of them pull themselves up out of the fire and stand up again for what they believe, and some of them actually succeed at that. That's just something I think people need to see, especially today.
Yep.
And it's true. I usually have to make stuff up. That's what's funny about this. I've worked with the scholars before. I would write something for Nat Geo, and Ben would say, "You can't do that, Tom. That didn't happen." I'm like, "Oh, Ben, it's more fun this way." And so, but not here. You can't make this stuff up. Your reality is more compelling than fiction.
Yes, definitely with this story, it's so remarkable. There's going to be all the feels. There's so much conflict and drama and tension, but you go through every emotion with this story.
And I think I can't go into a lot of detail, but the opening scene. I've done 2 shows. I've been in a lot of shows on Salem, and they always, when you show the executions, the hangings, which usually are not shown correctly, but they're fun to watch, people who are horror fans. But the opening of this, I found another way to do it, and it's actually more brutal because it all is seen from a child's eyes, a child's point of view. Because to see and know that people are being hung, the way I described, strangling on a rope, dangling for 7 minutes, gasping for air, trying to fight for your life when your hands are tied behind your back. And you have a 12-year-old in the audience watching this. I mean, Anne had to be shocked. She knows that she accused them, but when she sees them actually die, what went through that? She's a child, for God's sake. She's 12 years old. And she saw them all die, not just once. 19 people got hung, right? One got pressed with rocks.
Yeah.
Well, let's just change. Let's just put rocks on the guy so we break his chest. I'm like, what? Come on, kids, let's go watch that. I mean, how these people cannot be traumatized is beyond me. So I think any psychologist would agree that we are onto something here.
Absolutely.
I mean, no one ever applied PTSD to these people before. And to me, it's so blatantly obvious. How can you not see that? And that's what makes such a horror film out of it, because it has daymares, and I researched them, and night terrors, like you mentioned that. And you don't know you're dreaming. And the thing about nightmares is your mind knows what you're afraid of. So your own mind knows your worst fears, and that's what it throws in your face, especially if you're a kid or a grown woman.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when her parents die, she's alone. And it's interesting, Reverend Green obviously played a big role in getting a relationship with her, getting her to trust him, because they worked together to write that. I'm sure it was mostly him, but there had to be a relationship there, trust, between a 32-year-old woman and a grown man. And he's a reverend. It's interesting. He actually, again, using psychology, she goes in expecting him to be one way. And when he sees that, he just changes his approach. And then that throws her off, and she lowers her guard. And that is what, he's a master. And we know it's probably likely he did, because from our discussions with the scholars, he did achieve to some degree what he was sent to do. So I think we know how.
Great.
It has been so wonderful to talk to you about these projects. We're so looking forward to.
This happened for a reason. I believe in fate. This is not coincidence, man. And when Sarah and I used to talk to you and George, and then the Putnam descent, and I'm like, this is something really cool is happening here, something growing. And my agent, Eliza, we talked last night, he's very psyched over this. He thinks it's time for it to happen as well. And he knows that, he mentioned horror films don't get as much money as dramas, but they're almost a guaranteed profit, especially in Halloween. And now we have elements of both. You could bill it as a horror series. You could bill it as a drama series. People are not going to be disappointed. I guarantee there'll be a viewer discretion warning in front of each show. I don't see that not happening.
Yeah.
And I think it should happen, because I don't think we should hold our punches here. I think we should let it all out. Let these people have their day, and let them be seen for what they did, and the consequences they all paid for their actions.
Yeah.
There's no winners here.
No.
Either you were hung, you lost your life. The people who walked away, they would die young. Putnam family all died young. They all paid the price. So to see why they died young and what they went through, that's what really I find compelling. I want to tell their story. I want to tell their story.
Thank you for listening to this special episode of Witch Hunt.
Stay tuned after our outro for never-before-seen footage from Tom's work on the Salem witch trials.
Have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.
In 1892,
the property owner.
In the summer of 1692, on 4 different occasions, June, July, August, and September,
We know 19 people were executed by hanging.
found guilty by a jury of their peers of witchcraft.
It was a gruesome experience.
That people would be there kicking and gasping for air.
The viewshed analysis, which takes Pearlie's studies into account and Rebecca Ames's account, which was hours after an execution, pretty much pinpoints, I think, where the executions had been.
However, that never gained traction.
When people were executed in the 17th and the 18th century, usually they would have been interred somewhere near the gallows.
We know that at least 3 bodies were removed almost as soon as the hanging was over.
There is a contemporary reference of some of the bodies being cut down and dragged by the halters, the ropes, the noose, to a shallow grave where they were incompletely buried.
the bodies were dumped conveniently into small crevice areas between the rocks.
Step one of this process was to determine whether or not there was indeed fractures. Are there fractures in those rocks that could contain victims? Yes, there are. No question about that now. They exist. Could there be any victims left in those fractures? That's stage two. Stage two would require a different approach, using the same equipment, but a much different approach on a more micro level. In addition, however, now we bring in the big guns. Now we start to run some chemistry on the soil. So we would sample the soil at various levels. We take that soil chemistry, we send it to a lab for some atomic absorption spectroscopy. You start to look at certain ratios of isotopes that may or may not indicate the existence of decomposing bone and tooth material in the subsurface. I think we'll solve the problem. I think we'll be able to pinpoint where the victims may be.
Good day. You are one who brings this man to death. If you have charged anything upon him that is not true, recall it before it be too late, while he be yet alive.
I have charged nothing upon this man that be not true. I have nothing to recant.
Such was the darkness of that day that we walked in the clouds. The tortures and lamentations of the afflicted, and the power of former precedents.
Husband, will you be coming to bed soon?
Aye. A few things to finish here first. And we walked in the clouds, and we could not see our way.